me recap. We are talking today about ways to enhance your climax. And the first way we are talking about is conflict, right? And in conflict, there are internal and external conflicts, right? We just talked about how external conflicts, right? Can be resolved in between characters or can be resolved between the character and their environments. We talked about how external conflicts can be time dependent. The urgency of that conflict makes it even more exciting, and that it can be multiple stages, meaning there can be successive obstacles, right, that occur that make your character increasingly in trouble, okay? And that makes it even more interesting and exciting, okay? Right, so let's move on now to internal conflicts, okay? So internal conflicts are more interesting in the sense that they don't occur outside the character, they're not between characters, and they don't occur with the environment, they occur inside your character, okay? And it's kind of like you're struggling with yourself. So you become the enemy, right? You become the enemy, right? It's like the enemy within, okay? So that's another way to make your story more interesting. When your character has an internal conflict or a struggle inside of them, okay? Can you all think of one case where you might struggle with yourself? Anyone? What scenario could you be in where you might struggle with yourself? Duncan, go ahead.
Maybe when you want to lie to somebody.
Okay, you are tempted to lie to somebody to cover up the truth. Maybe you will get in trouble if you let the truth get out. So that struggle between telling the truth and covering the situation up with a lie is an internal conflict. Very good. Solomon, what about you?
Like a dilemma.
Very good. A dilemma. Can you give me a specific example of a dilemma, please? You're right.
Cheating an exam.
Very good. The dilemma in this case is between getting a high mark and being honest, right? So there's this internal conflict between two sides of you, one part wanting to be honest and the other part wanting to score a really high mark, but using an unscrupulous or a negative strategy to do so, right? Okay, so in both Duncan and Solomon's example, can you all see the internal conflict? Your character is torn between two separate, opposite reactions, right? On the one hand is the good reaction, but it has a cost to it, right? On the other hand is the bad reaction, right? You know it's bad, but there's some kind of benefit to it, okay? And that's what causes your character to enter into what I would call a morally ambiguous situation, right? Where the character doesn't know what to do and is torn between two very tempting alternatives, okay? So overcoming a temptation, or in this case, today what we are writing about, which is overcoming a challenge, right? The internal conflict might be your character wants to give up, right? Your character just wants to not do it. But on the other hand, your character really wants to try, succeed, and overcome that challenge, okay? So that's the internal conflict that you can build into your story, and that will make your story much more interesting, okay? So again, internal conflicts can be time dependent, right? There can be an element of urgency to it. Something might be happening really soon, like, the exam is about to end, right? Or, the presentation is about to happen, right? Or a confrontation is about to occur, right? So there's something that's about to happen. There's an urgency to it, okay? And of course, you can also increase the obstacles here. You can make things go wrong one after another. Maybe you prepare a script, you're very nervous about presenting it because you have like agoraphobia, stage fright, okay? And just as you're about to present it, you lose the script, okay? Or you spill something on your shirt and you don't look presentable for the presentation. So there are all these different obstacles that can make your internal conflict even worse. You struggle even more, okay? So making things worse before they get better is a very powerful way to make your story much more interesting and compelling. Okay, are you all with me so far? Are you all good? Right, give me a nod if what I'm saying makes sense. Okay, so I recap. We are talking about ways to improve our climax. The first way is conflict, and inside of conflict, there's internal and external conflict. Inside of external conflict, there is conflict with other characters. There's conflict with the environment. Inside internal conflict Likewise, there is an internal, morally ambiguous situation you're torn between two different, very tempting and opposite reactions, right? And you have to choose between them, okay? So internal and external conflicts are very, very powerful. And can you tell me, this is a quiz, what is better than internal and external conflicts? Which is better than internal conflict? Which is better than external conflict? Can you tell me? What type of conflict is better than internal and external conflict? Anyone? It's a riddle. Anyone want to try?
Is it both internal and external conflicts combined?
Who is speaking? Who is speaking? Identify yourself. Who was speaking just now?
Lucas.
Oh, thank you. But Lucas, always raise your hands, okay? Yes, Lucas is absolutely right. If you combine both types of conflict, that is the best type of conflict. Got it? All right. So 2 is better than 1. So if you can, right, in every story, try to inject both internal and external conflict. Okay, everybody good? Right? So I'm trying to keep this really short, okay? And I will give you some examples in the resources that I'll send to you. All right? Yes, Duncan, please ask your question.
Is there a word for that?
You mean for both?
Yeah, internal and external.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. You just have to combine them both, okay? Just combine both internal and external. And by the way, Duncan, I hope you get better. It looks like you're having a fever too, is it? Okay, right. So internal and external conflict, very good. Use both. But if you cannot use both, whether it's because of time or because you can't think of it, then just use at least one. Okay, can you promise me you use at least one? Can? Okay, very good. So as long as you use at least one, I count it as a win. But if you can use both and you can show me very obviously that there is internal and external conflict, I consider that a win-win. Okay, it's a win-win, right? Okay, now let me go to the second strategy. So first strategy is conflict, right? So second strategy is setting. Okay, now where does the setting of a story always occur? Anybody wants to tell me where I can find the setting of any story always? Okay, Javen, go ahead. Introduction. Introduction. Ariel.
Also introduction.
Also introduction. Okay. Hao Tian?
Starting of the story.
Starting of the story. Okay. All three of you are correct and wrong at the same time. Okay. You are both, all three of you, correct and wrong at the same time. Yes, it's true. The beginning of story always contains the setting or the introduction to the story, but the setting is built throughout the story. Not if you understand what I mean. Shake your head if you don't understand what I mean. Okay, some of you are shaking your heads. So when you start the story, you generally describe the weather and you talk about the setting, right? Where this thing is taking place, correct? You describe the location of your story, okay? But as your story develops, your characters may move from one place to another, correct? The story may not occur in the same place, right? You may move, like you may be transported by the ambulance to the hospital, or you may fall down a ditch and into a pool, or you may end up, in a different place. So you must constantly be conscious that you are developing the setting wherever you go. So setting is not limited just to the introduction, but it follows every single part of your story. Okay, so don't forget, very important, setting isn't just limited to the introduction. That's a common misconception that many students forget to describe their surroundings as they go into the rising action, the climax, even the falling action and the conclusion of the story, when the setting is important in every part of your story. Got it, everybody? Awesome, okay? So one very powerful tool is to mirror the emotional state of your characters to the setting. So if you are writing a story that's going to be really sad and really tragic. You don't want a cheerful sunny day, do you? You don't want like the birds twittering in the sky and the leaves rustling in the green forest, right? You want something really gloomy. So use the weather patterns to reflect the mind or the state of emotions of your characters, right? And you can use these two techniques that I've just put on the slide. One is foreshadowing, okay? As you can tell from the word foreshadow, right? It's kind of like something bad is about to happen, okay? And often the weather can introduce this element of ominous foreboding, this sense that something bad is about to happen, okay? So if you build your weather carefully, right, your weather can add to the mood of your story and make it really tragic and ominous and dark, and difficult. Or if you're writing a story of, somebody overcoming a challenge, like what we're doing in Unit 2, then your weather can actually begin very gloomy, but then slowly, brighten up, and then, the sun can burst through the clouds, and then there can be a sense of the weather just breaking out into a much better state, which mirrors how your character struggles and then overcomes difficulty in order to achieve a prize or to triumph in that area of disability. Do you get what I mean? So foreboding and foreshadowing is a powerful technique. I want you to be very conscious. Don't just add weather for weather's sake. Use the weather to mirror your character's internal state so that it adds value to your story, right? Every element that you write should add value to your story, should make your story a little bit better, so that when everything combines together, wow, your story becomes really shockingly good, okay? So think of the weather, the setting, as something you can use to power your story, okay? And the second thing is timing, right? So your length of the sentences that you write, do you know, right, can affect the sense of time as your reader reads the story, right? So let me give you an example, right? If I use a short sentence, he stopped, he looked, he screamed. Can you hear? Short sentence, 2 words, right? He stopped, he looked, he screamed. Can you feel that the time is speeding up? Can you feel like things are happening very fast? He stopped, he looked, he screamed. So the shorter the sentence, the faster the time is passing. The longer the sentence, right? He looked across the beautiful meadows that rolled endlessly into the distance as the sun burst out from behind the clouds and shed its light upon the gleaming leaves. Can you hear how the time is slowing down and your character is relaxing in that environment and things are going slower? Okay? So a very powerful way to change the mood and the timing is to lengthen or shorten your sentence as you write. So be conscious of this as well. This is a powerful tool to set the scene in your story. Okay? So far, are you doing good? Give me a thumbs up if you're following. I'm coming to the end already, okay? Like I promised, half an hour only. Short and sweet. And later, if you think I'm talking too fast, you can always come back and watch this video again. And I will send you the slides. Okay? Awesome. How am I doing? Am I okay? Are you finding this useful? Is this something new? Okay, good. Right. As long as you're learning something new, that's great. Okay, so I recap again. You'll notice that every point I try to recap so that I try to help you to internalize and remember this. Okay, so I'm talking about 2 ways I can improve my climax. The first way was conflict, and conflict can be internal or external. And when it's external, it can involve characters, between characters. It can involve the environment and the character. When it's internal, it involves 2 different opposite reactions that your character has to choose between, and he's torn between these 2 actions, tempted by either one. So that's external, internal. What's better than external or internal? External and internal combined. 2 types of conflict make it even more powerful. Okay, then I move on to setting, and I talked about how setting is very powerful because setting is not just in the introduction, but it follows your character through different parts of the story, and they may change their locations, they may change their internal states, right? So when there's a change in the emotions, the weather should reflect that. Okay, you can use the weather, you can use the timing, the sentence length to change the mood and the setting of the story. Shorter sentences, faster action. Longer sentences, slower action. And that speed can play up the effectiveness of your story. Very much like in music, when you listen to music, you often have fast beats, right? Very excited. Then sometimes you have very slow beats and you feel like that sense of calmness and relaxation. So you're controlling the beat of your writing through the length of the sentences that you use. All good so far? Everybody understands what I said? Awesome. Okay. Now, right? Read this. Okay. Another way that you can enhance the setting of your scene is to add mystery. Mystery. Okay. Mystery. The element of the unknown, uncertain, right? So don't tell your readers every single thing, right? There's no need to tell them everything that, is happening. You let them guess, instead of saying that he's angry, right? You tell them that his face turned red, right? He clenched his fist, right? Veins bulged along the sides of his face, right? So I'm giving you clues, and then you guess what this character is feeling, right? That way you engage the reader and you make your story more interesting rather than saying he was angry, boring, right? In your face, right? No subtlety at all, not interesting, right? But put in elements that add mystery to the story and you hook your reader. And your reader will be like, what's he trying to say here? And then as he's guessing what you're writing, he's engaged in your story, and that makes an effective story. Okay, everybody? All good? Okay, awesome. I just want to stop here for a bit and say thank you all. You're very attentive. I can see that you're just focused and you're not distracted. I love that. Please keep that up, okay? Awesome. Good job. I'm coming to an end already. Okay? Your stamina will be rewarded. Okay, good. Okay, so show not tell, right? Using clues instead of giving answers, right? Getting your readers to ask questions and answer questions themselves, right? Is a very powerful way to set the scene rather than telling them. Add mystery, right? A sense of mystery to what you are writing, and your writing will be that much more interesting. Okay, so I've come to the end of these two tools, right? Simple enough, right? I think y'all can remember without even referring to the PowerPoint slides, right? Okay, because I've gone through the revision several times. I want you to practice using this particular strategy to write the first draft of your story for overcoming a challenge. Okay, let me stop the share here. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay. So let's see, where is it? Yeah, here it is. Okay, can you all see this? You should have received this. Okay, you should have this. Like kids who are here today, I gave this out to you earlier. Kids that were not here today, it should be in the envelope. It should be in the white envelope. Yes, Zoe, exactly. And oh dear, I really hope you get better soon. Okay, so many of you with fever patches on your heads. Okay, if you're not well, please drop out from this call. Okay, you don't need to be here, right? I don't want you to be unwell and then get worse. Okay, so I want you to type out on a Word document or in an email, whichever works for you. And I want you to include these two strategies that I've just covered. What are the two strategies? Conflict and setting. Got it? Under conflict, I want you to include either an internal or an external conflict between your characters or between the character and the environment, or internal conflict, the character being torn between two difficult areas. Can you see how you can do this, right? All three pictures lend themselves to internal and external conflict, okay? But if you want me to recommend you a picture, I would recommend you either the first or the second picture. And I would also recommend that you use only one picture when you craft your story, just one. The more pictures you choose, the more restricted your story will be, because then you have to follow all the pictures that you've just included. So one picture is always, in my mind, the best way to go. Okay, so choose one of the three pictures and then write a themed story about overcoming obstacles, okay, including an internal or an external conflict. It can be both. If you can do both, wow, that's a win-win situation, okay? And then I want you also to include something to do with the setting. So I want the weather to somehow mirror, right, the conflict that your character is going through. Is that okay? Right? So type out the story. Don't write it out. Type it out, right? And then I want you to send it to me through SLS. I will create an assignment for you to submit. Do you all know how to attach and submit a Word document? You do, right? Okay, if you have any problems, message me separately. I will send you a tutorial video. Okay, but otherwise, I think you all should be familiar with it. So this is your assignment for all the way until next Friday.